What if the memories you can't explain aren't mistakes, aren't coincidences, aren't imagination at all, but fragments of a life you've already lived, drifting back to you because you're finally ready to see them? You feel something when it resurfaces, an ache, a shiver, a pull you can't rationalize. Science shrugs, logic dismisses. But Edgar Cayce spent decades describing something far more intimate, far more ancient. The soul quietly remembering its past. And if you're here, it's because those echoes have already begun. A face you recognize instantly. A place you've never been, but somehow miss. A fear that was born before this lifetime. These aren't accidents, these are signals. And in the next few moments, I'm going to show you the signs that reveal whether your soul has walked this earth before. Signs you felt your entire life, even if no one ever told you what they meant. To understand past lives, you have to step out of the mind and into the memory beneath it. The memory that doesn't sit in the brain, but in the soul itself. Cayce taught that reincarnation isn't a theory. It's the quiet architecture of human experience. The invisible thread connecting all your lifetimes into one long, unfolding story. Your soul carries every lesson, every wound, every triumph, not as images, but as impressions that rise when something in this life triggers something from another. That moment of déjà vu that hits too deep. The unexplainable bond with someone you barely know. The talent you never trained for, but somehow already possessed. The fear that makes no sense, yet feels older than you. These are the echoes Cayce spoke of. Echoes that follow the soul across centuries. Echoes that surface when you're ready to remember who you were, so you can understand who you are. Science studies the brain, but the brain is just the instrument. The soul is the musician. And when the musician has played many lifetimes, the melody becomes layered, familiar, haunting. As you move through this exploration, notice what resonates, not with your mind, but with that deeper part of you that recognizes truth before you even hear it. If something inside you stirs, it's because your soul is remembering itself. And when you follow that stirring into the deeper record, you find that this isn't a new idea or a poetic metaphor. It's something Edgar Cayce described repeatedly in his documented trance readings. Over thousands of sessions, he spoke of souls returning to Earth again and again, carrying forward patterns, unfinished lessons, and the echoes of who they once were. I've spent time reading and studying these transcripts myself, not as doctrine, but as a map of how consciousness evolves across lifetimes. And this is my interpretation of Cayce's work. Reincarnation isn't fantasy, it's continuity. It's the soul expressing itself in different bodies. The way a musician plays different instruments, different shapes, different tones, but the same underlying essence. Cayce's reading showed that the traits you can't explain, the relationships that ignite instantly, the wounds that feel ancient, all point to a story much larger than one lifetime. They form patterns of consciousness, repeating not to trap you, but to guide you toward growth. And once you recognize those patterns, your life stops feeling random and starts feeling remembered. And you see this most clearly in the stories of ordinary people whose lives quietly cracked open under the weight of something they couldn't explain. There was the woman who swore she had never left the country, yet carried a vivid memory of a narrow stone street overlooking a bay she could describe in perfect detail. It wasn't a dream, not a fantasy, just an image that lived inside her with no origin in this lifetime. Years later, she travelled with a friend, stepped off a bus in a coastal European town she had never studied, and felt her entire body exhale. She knew the turns before she made them. She knew the view before it appeared. And when she later read Cayce's teachings on geographic memory, the soul retaining emotional imprints from places it once lived, something clicked. What she carried wasn't imagination, it was continuity. And the same is true for you. Then there was the man who'd lived his whole life with a crippling, unexplainable fear of deep water. No trauma, no near drowning, nothing in his history that should have left a mark like that. Yet every time he stood near the ocean, his chest tightened, as if remembering something his mind couldn't reach. After exploring Cayce's work, he began to consider a possibility he'd never entertained. That the fear wasn't from this life at all, but from a life cut short by water long ago. As he sat with that idea, not as superstition, but as a spiritual echo, the fear slowly softened. He didn't erase it, but he understood it. And understanding is often the first liberation. And the same is true for you. And then there was the child, barely 3 years old, who met a family friend for the first time and said, with the casual certainty of a greeting, "You used to take me to the garden." The adults laughed nervously, but Cayce would have said this was soul group memory, the recognition of someone the soul had travelled with before, long before this lifetime. Children often show what adults have forgotten, that identity is temporary, but connection is eternal. And the same is true for you. So let me ask you something gently. Why do certain places feel familiar the moment you arrive, even though you've never stood there before? Why do some people feel like instant home while others remain strangers, no matter how long you know them? Why do some fears feel ancient, as if they were carved into you long before you were born? Cayce believed these moments aren't coincidences. They're memories rising from beneath the surface, the soul whispering what the mind has forgotten. And if you're honest, you felt these whispers too. A pull, a recognition, a knowing without logic. That's not imagination, that's remembrance. Your soul carries far more history, love, and experience than this single lifetime could ever hold. And whether you realize it or not, a part of you already knows. Your story didn't begin here. It's only continuing. And when you start putting these experiences into structure, the patterns become almost impossible to ignore. Cayce often said that the soul leaves fingerprints across lifetimes, subtle, consistent, and deeply personal. The first indicator is what he called emotional echoes, those unexplained fears, talents, or reactions that arrive with no origin in your current life. A sudden panic near water, a natural ability you never trained for, a joy or grief you can't trace. These are emotional remnants carried forward. The second is soul recognition. Those moments when you meet someone and feel an instant bond, or, just as powerfully, an immediate aversion. According to Cayce, these reactions come from connections formed long before this lifetime, threads of relationship woven across incarnations. And the third is timeline residue. Memories, dreams, or images that feel too real to dismiss. Fragments of scenes, places, or identities that don't belong to your present story, but still live inside you. Layered within these three indicators are deeper elements. Karmic imprints that shape your challenges, soul group patterns that guide who enters your life, and repeating life themes that reveal what your soul is still trying to master. When you understand these structures, past lives stop feeling like myth and start feeling like memory. And this is where the truth really opens. Science can map the brain, but it can't measure the part of you that remembers what the brain has never learned. Cayce wasn't describing fantasy, he was describing continuity, the ongoing journey of a soul that has lived, loved, lost, and evolved across ages. You aren't just a person with instincts, you're a being with history. What you call intuition is often memory surfacing through the cracks, the quiet return of something you've already known in another time, another body, another chapter of the same enduring consciousness. Past lives aren't about who you were, they're about understanding why you respond the way you do now, why certain doors open effortlessly, why certain wounds feel ancient, why certain loves feel eternal. And if Cayce was sitting across from you, he would say it simply. You have lived before, and every lifetime has brought you to this one. And once you feel that truth, even for a moment, you never see yourself the same way again. And if you're still here, feeling that quiet stirring inside you, then honor what just moved through you. If this awakens something in you, honor it with a like. Comment, "I remember," if your soul recognized even a fragment of this truth. Share this with someone who feels older than their years, someone who has carried wisdom they could never explain. These small gestures aren't just engagement, they're acknowledgement, a way of saying, I know there's more to me than this lifetime. Let this be your way of affirming the memories your soul has been trying to return to you. And as you take a breath and settle back into yourself, remember this. Your soul's journey is ancient, intentional, and beautifully complex. You are not new, you are returning, gathering the pieces of who you've been so you can become who you're meant to be. Nothing you've ever felt has been random. The longings, the déjà vu, the unexplained wisdom, the wounds that feel older than your body, they're all part of a tapestry woven across lifetimes. Every incarnation has carried you toward more understanding, more compassion, more truth. And whether you realize it or not, you're still unfolding. This is the Cayce Chronicles, where forgotten lifetimes rise back into memory.